Hello, in this video we are going to cover the topic instance as return value or how to return an object from a function or a method. So now in order to understand this topic, um, all you have to remember is that every name is just a reference to an object. So let's review that quickly. This is again one of the most fundamental concepts in object-oriented programming in Python. So if we have a class car and then we instantiate a car instance and assign it to a name, what we basically are doing is that we have an identifier or a name car1 and it references or points to an actual car instance. Okay, and then if we create an attribute inside that instance, that's in this case, the attribute's name is make, then that make is another identifier that reference a string that represents, well, in this case, the value Honda. Okay, so should not be anything new there. And then if the next thing that we do, if we assign car1 to another name, which is car2, it causes both car1 and car2 to reference the same instance. So if we want to see some code for this, okay, hang on a second. Presentation mode. Now that's what happened here. So if we print out car1 and car2, as we've seen many times, they are exactly the same. And to further prove that they are indeed just two names but referencing the same object, we can set, let's say, just car2 year to a different number, a different year, and then we see that not only car2 picks up that change, car1 also picks up that change. So like I said, if you understand these two slides, the rest of the topic here should kind of very naturally follow what we just talked about. Okay, so now what if we just saw that car1 and car2 are pointing to the same object and changing one change the other, right? What if we want the opposite effect, that while we still want car2 to be exactly the same as car1, but we want it to be just copies so that when we change car2, for example, it does not affect car1. So this is called a copying or the cloning operation. It's fairly common. So think for a moment, how do we do that? How do we make a copy instead of the two names referencing the same instance? Okay, so what we can do, one idea, and probably the right idea, is that we just instantiate a new instance of car and then set each of its attributes to the values of the original, right? And the way we can do that is, so here, instead of assigning car1 to car2, I'll just create a new car. Okay, and what should be the make of the new car? Well, it should be the make of car1, the original one. So I'll get the make, oops, not model, make. And then for the new car's model, I'll just get the original car's model, and same for the year. Right, and now we can, before we do any change, we can print out the origin, well, before change, and then this would be after change. Okay, so we run it, Now, before any change, that would be after cloning before, let's say after cloning before any change. So after cloning before change, the two are exactly the same, car1 and car2, right? That proves that we successfully done the cloning. But then after changing just car2's year to 2010, only car2's years change while car1's year remains intact. So that's great. That's exactly what we want. Okay, and if you kind of need a picture to help you understand this, this is how it looks like. Now here in the picture, I kind of put the attributes not as another reference. I just put it as part of the class just to simplify things. But the general idea is the same, right? That when we instantiate a new car for car2, we are creating a completely separate instance. Okay, so even though these two looks exactly the same, they are two separate objects, separate instances. And so when I change just car2, it will change this instance, but leaving car1 not touched at all. Okay, so cloning, as I said, is actually a very common operation. So instead of, excuse me, instead of doing just writing ad hoc a few lines of code, we really should make it into a method. Okay, and where do we put the method? Well, because we're cloning a car, we should really make it part of the car class, right? So any clients, which there could be potentially many different clients of the car class, can use the cloning method. Now, we basically have a few options how exactly we write the clone method. One is to make it an instance method. Then the way to use it would be just, given an instance of a car, in our example car1, we say car1.clone, and that returns to us a new clone of car1. So that's one option. Another option is to make it either a class or a static method. And the way to call it is we start with the class, and then we say car.clone, and then we give it the original car that we want to clone from, and this method will return a new instance that looks exactly like the original. So either one will work, but for the demonstration here, that we'll choose to go with writing a static method. So, and it should be fairly straightforward. So let's actually write it right here. So we'll write it as a static method and define clone. And then we're cloning a car, right? And we just say, say the new car is, we instantiate a new a new car instance, and then again the make is just going to copy it here, although I do have to rename it, so let me just do this. I'm going to rename it as car. So there, I have a new car that takes the original car's make, model, and year, and then when we are successfully creating a new instance, we return the new car, and that is the clone. Okay, so now instead of doing our kind of a ad hoc cloning here, we'll do the object-oriented approach. We'll do car.clone, and we'll give it car1, and if we do everything correctly, this should work exactly the same as before. So let's check. After cloning, the two are the same, and then after we change car2 to 2010, car2's year changed, car1 did not. So great, we've done what we set out to do, and that's that. Now, one question is, or that might arise in your head, is that, okay, so new car, since we created inside a method, it is a local variable, right? A variable local to the method, and it's only visible inside that method, right? That's what we've been saying about local variables. And we have to does that work? Right? I mean, we're returning a local variable. Is that okay? Well, so let's take a look at what really happened in these few lines of code. So, new car, okay, new car creates, new car is a name or an identifier that reference an object, right? A car object. Okay. Now, when we return it as a result of a call to clone, that name essentially replaces this call, right? It's the return value of this call. Now, the return value of this call is pointing to the same thing to what new car is pointing to, right? And then remember what we said about when we assign one identifier to another? Well, that final assignment, this assignment here, is assigning this reference to car2, which now points to this instance of car. Okay, so we ended up, as far as this picture shows, doing the right thing. Car2 is pointing to the instance of car that is created inside the clone method. Okay, so this really works, despite the fact that what we said about the local variable. So what really happened is when we say a local variable is visible only inside a method, well, the name new car, the identifier new car, is only visible inside the method. However, the object or the instance that the name refers to, okay, this thing lives in a part of the memory that is called the heap, and this object is available for as long as there is a name, at least one name, that references the instance. So while the name might be gone once the method returns, the object stays around because there's another name pointing or referencing it. Okay, so this is kind of in a high level how it works. Don't worry about the term heap and things like that just yet, but for those of you who have maybe study computer architectures, this should sound very familiar. Okay. All right, I think that's the end of this video.